On my last birthday, they gave me a $2 coupon and didn't even look me in the eyes. You know, the kind of gift that says, without a word, just how irrelevant you've become? That was it. They laughed, made jokes about my age, and went back to their phones like I was part of the furniture. I smiled, because that's what we learn to do when everything inside us is shattered. But no one wants to hear the sound of breaking. For years I gave everything to this family. I washed, cooked, cared. For sick grandchildren, swept the floor with a broken back and a bleeding heart, all without asking for anything, except a little respect. But respect became a luxury in this house. And I became the helper, the old woman in the laundry room, invisible in my own home. If I'm telling you this today, it's because I survived. Because despite the pain, I still have a voice. And if you've ever felt like your existence was ignored by the very people you loved most, then please, stay with me until the end of this story. It's not just mine, it's ours. This story doesn't begin with shouting, and it doesn't end with easy forgiveness. It begins. When my son got married, I was the first to open my arms. I filled the house with flowers, remodeled the guest room for them, cooked his favorite dishes, and did everything to make his wife feel welcome. At first, I thought it was just a matter of adjustment, that in time, she'd call me Mom, or at least Miss Ruth with warmth, but that never happened. She treated me with a coldness that cut deep, as if every word she spoke had to pass through a filter of disdain. And my son, he seemed blind. Maybe out of love, maybe out of comfort. He just let it happen. I started to notice that, slowly, my presence was no longer welcome in the living room. They'd ask me to stay in my space, say it was better for me to rest. But deep down, it was just a polite way of saying, get out of the way. Still, I stayed, washing dishes, picking up toys, mending torn clothes. Sometimes one of the grandkids would come up to me and ask, Grandma, are you sad? I'd smile, heart shattered, and say, no, sweetheart, I'm just tired. But I wasn't just tired. I was being erased, one day at a time. The house that was once my refuge became a place where I tiptoed so I wouldn't bother anyone. The guest room turned into my daughter-in-law's office. They put me in the laundry room. Just for a while, they said. That while lasted 4 years. 4 years. Listening to the washing machine hum, feeling the cold, damp walls, and the deafening silence of abandonment. I tried to talk. One time I told my son, do you remember when I stayed up all night with you when you were sick? He answered, Mom, stop being dramatic. That day I cried in the bathroom. It wasn't drama. It was memory. It was the pain of someone who gave everything and was met with indifference. And still, something inside me whispered, hold on a little longer, he'll see. I clung to that hope like someone holding onto the edge of a cliff, until one day, that edge gave way, and with it, what little was left of me. The laundry room was just a passageway. I used to hang clothes there, mop floors, chat with neighbors through the back window. After my daughter-in-law moved in, it became my room. They shoved an old mattress between the sink and the cabinet full of cleaning supplies, hung a curtain where a door should have been. That's where I slept, listening to the dripping faucet and the never-ending hum of the washing machine. The smell was constant. Cheap detergent, damp mold creeping up the walls, and the overpowering perfume on her clothes. Some nights I woke up gasping for air from the mix of it all, but I couldn't complain. They said I was too sensitive, and lucky not to be in a nursing home. Lucky. That word echoed in my head like a cruel joke. Little by little I began to fade. My clothes fit into 2 plastic bags. My photo albums were shoved into the attic. My rocking chair, once on the porch, was sold online without a word. When I asked, they said, you barely use it. I wanted to scream, because you don't let me exist anymore. Breakfast became a blur. I often ate standing up, packing the kids' lunches. She'd say good morning the way you'd nod to a stranger in an elevator. And my son, he didn't kiss me on the forehead anymore. He'd sit, eat the bread I baked before dawn, and leave with a quick, see you later. It sounded less and less like love, more like, stay out of this. They gave me orders without looking at me. Wash the dishes, pick up the medicine, check the gas. I obeyed in silence, not because I was weak, but because I still believed maybe, just maybe, they'd offer a sliver of kindness, a genuine thank you, but it never came. Not even on Christmas. That last Christmas, they gave me a scented candle. One of those from the discount bin. Price tag still on, $1.99. Meanwhile, they exchanged expensive gifts, filmed videos for social media, and excluded me from the family photo. I was in the kitchen, collecting glasses. My only memory of that Christmas was the candle wax dripping onto the drawer where I kept the deed to the house. I started whispering to myself at night, "Am I really this easy to ignore? Did I fail that badly as a mother?" I even thought about disappearing one morning, leaving a note, but I didn't want to vanish. I wanted to be seen. I wanted someone, just once, to say, "You matter." My health began to decline. Blood pressure spiking, aching legs, relentless headaches. One day I fainted while washing the patio. I woke up alone on the cold ground, the hose still running. They said I was being dramatic, that I needed more physical activity. I sat there, soaked, wondering if I had ever truly been loved. And then, I heard it. Through the half-closed door, the sentence that shattered me. "We need to get that house in our name before she dies and makes it complicated." My heart froze. It wasn't just neglect. It was greed, a betrayal from my own blood. And that's when something changed. I stopped hoping, and I started preparing. I remember the exact moment I heard it. It was a Tuesday morning. The kids were at school, the house was quiet, and I was folding towels in the hallway. That hallway, the one where I used to hang their birthday drawings and Mother's Day cards. I bent down to pick up a clothespin that had rolled under the washer when I heard their voices, low at first, almost careless. "She still has the deed, doesn't she?" It was my daughter-in-law's voice, sharp like always. "If something happens to her, we'll be stuck in probate for months." "She's old. It's only a matter of time," my son replied, like he was discussing garbage pickup. "We need to transfer the house now, while she still knows what's going on, before her mind slips completely." I froze. Not even my breathing dared to make a sound. They kept talking like I wasn't even human, like I was an obstacle, like my life, my history, my pain, none of it mattered anymore. "We'll say it's for her protection," she added. "She's getting forgetful anyway. She won't know what she's signing." Forgetful. I remembered every damn sacrifice I made. Every night I stayed up when he had asthma attacks. Every extra shift I worked when he needed new shoes. Every birthday party I scraped together with coins and prayers. But now I was just a nuisance, a legal risk, a signature away from being erased. When their voices faded into the other room, I stood there, my knees trembling. The towel slipped from my hands. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, not from illness, but from something far worse, being betrayed by the person I gave everything to. There's a kind of heartbreak only a mother can know, when your own child stops seeing you as a person. That day, something inside me broke, but not in the way they hoped. It didn't shatter into weakness. It cracked open a silence so powerful it felt like thunder inside me. I didn't scream. I didn't confront them. I simply began watching everything, quietly, intentionally. I noted where they kept their papers, how they spoke when they thought I wasn't there, what they whispered when the mail arrived. For days, I pretended nothing had changed. I still cooked, cleaned, smiled when the kids ran by. But inside, I was building a wall, not to protect myself, but to separate myself from the illusion I had lived in for too long. An illusion that I was loved, respected, needed. That illusion was dead now. All that remained was the truth, and the house. At night, I would sit in the laundry room with the lights off and stare at the ceiling. I wasn't mourning a death. I was preparing for a resurrection. My own. It was no longer about getting their affection. It was about reclaiming my dignity. My name was on that deed, not theirs. And soon, they would remember it. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. I sat on the edge of the narrow mattress, in the laundry room, and whispered to myself, "No more." My feet touched the cold tile like a soldier stepping onto a battlefield. But I wasn't going to war with shouting or vengeance. I was going with patience, with silence, with intelligence. That same week, I waited until they were both out running errands and quietly searched through the filing cabinet in the hallway. It was tucked behind a stack of unused holiday decorations and a broken lamp they never bothered to fix. My hands trembled as I pulled out the file labeled House Legal. There, tucked among electric bills and insurance papers, was a faded copy of the original deed. My name, just mine. That one piece of paper reminded me. I wasn't powerless. I just forgot for a while. I took the bus to the public notary downtown. I didn't tell anyone. I wore my best coat, the one I hadn't worn since my husband's funeral. At the office, I asked for a certified copy of the property deed. The clerk looked at me kindly, maybe surprised, to see an old woman holding such important documents with such quiet authority. I paid in cash. No trail, no questions. On the way back, I passed a bookstore. I hadn't read anything in years, but something pulled me in. I bought a small notebook with a blue velvet cover and a matching pen. That night, I sat in the laundry room and began writing down everything. Dates, comments, movements. I called it the silent truth. It wasn't a diary. It was a map. The next phase took weeks. Every day while pretending to be busy cleaning or folding clothes, I observed. They whispered a lot. Sometimes about me, sometimes about renovating the house, even about selling it soon. They didn't know I had started recording them. I'd bought a tiny voice recorder online using cash from my sewing money. I hid it inside the flower vase on the living room table. Every night, I transferred the audio to an old MP3 player I found in the junk drawer. Late one Friday night, I heard them on the recording. "She's just dragging it out," my son said. "I swear if she dies without signing, I'll be stuck for months," she snapped. "Well, start pushing her. Guilt her. Cry if you have to. I already told her she's making things harder for the kids." That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I copied the audio to a USB drive and locked it in the back of my old purse. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about reclaiming my place in the world, about proving to myself that I hadn't gone soft or senile or forgotten. I had simply been quiet for too long. I booked an appointment with a lawyer, a woman, young, maybe in her 30s. She looked surprised when I sat across from her with a folder full of documents, recordings, and handwritten notes. "I want to protect what's mine," I said, "but I want to do it in a way that they don't see coming." She smiled, not in amusement, but in admiration. "You've already done most of the work." Over the next month, we met every week. She guided me through everything, setting up a trust, filing quiet title actions, preparing a formal cease and desist letter in case they tried to forge my signature. We discussed timing, impact, legality. I felt like I had a secret weapon, and it wasn't revenge. It was clarity. Back at home, I kept playing the part. I made soup when they were sick. I watched the grandkids. I even laughed at their jokes. But inside, I was a storm with a name. One evening, the daughter-in-law cornered me in the hallway. "You've been quiet lately," she said, eyes narrowed. "Is everything all right?" I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time I saw someone small, not powerful, not cruel, just scared. Scared that the woman they tried to erase was still standing. "Just thinking about my future," I replied, and walked away. The legal process was nearly complete. We set a date. They were going on a cruise, one they bragged about constantly but never once invited me to join. "You wouldn't enjoy it, Mom," he'd said. Too many stares. Perfect timing. The night before they left, I tucked a small envelope into the drawer of their bedroom dresser. Inside was a photocopy of the house deed, and a note that simply read, "This house has never belonged to you, and now it never will." While they were gone, the lawyer filed the last of the papers, a formal eviction notice. Legal, clean, irrefutable. But I wasn't done. With the help of a social worker I'd met years earlier at church, I connected with a youth shelter in desperate need of housing. I told them my story, not in full, but enough for them to understand the gravity. I offered the house, not for profit, for purpose, on the condition it would be turned into a home for girls who had aged out of foster care. They cried. I cried. Not from pain this time, but from a release I hadn't felt in years. I signed the transfer documents a week later. Ruth's Heaven, they called it. My name, finally in a place of peace. The day they returned from their cruise, I wasn't there. They arrived to find the locks changed, a banner on the front porch. Coming soon, Ruth's Heaven, a home of hope. No explanation, no confrontation, just truth, written in bold, beautiful letters. That night, I slept in a guest room at the shelter's temporary quarters. It smelled of fresh paint, hope, and a future I thought I'd never see again. My bed was small, but it was mine. My name was respected, and for the first time in years, I was free. They came back. From their cruise, tanned, loud, and laughing, completely unaware that everything they stood on had already crumbled beneath them. The taxi dropped them off in front of the house, their luggage stacked high, and the kids grumpy from travel fatigue. She was wearing a wide sun hat and oversized sunglasses. He was pulling the suitcase like he had conquered the world. And then they saw it. The porch was no longer theirs. The front garden, once left unwatered for months, was freshly planted. A welcome sign, Ruth's heaven, a place of hope and dignity, hung over the doorway. The locks had been changed, the curtains replaced, the mailbox, labeled with a name that was both familiar and foreign to them now. Mine. The daughter-in-law marched up to the door and rang the bell. No answer. She knocked. Still nothing. My son pulled out his phone and called me. I didn't answer. A few moments later, a young woman opened the door. She was barely 20. Kind eyes. Steady voice. "Can I help you?" "This is our house," my daughter-in-law snapped. "Where's Ruth?" The girl smiled gently. "Miss Ruth doesn't live here anymore, and neither do you. I'm her son. She left instructions. Legal ones. You'll want to check your mail." And with that, the door closed. Inside their mailbox was a manila envelope. It contained 3 things: a certified copy of the eviction notice, a statement of legal transfer of ownership to the Ruth's Heaven Foundation, and a handwritten letter, in blue ink, signed, simply, Ruth. The letter wasn't long. It didn't explain everything. It didn't beg for understanding. It didn't justify itself. It simply said, "You forgot who I was, but I never did. This house was my sanctuary, my battlefield, my cage. Now, it'll be someone else's freedom. I wish you peace. From far away. Ruth." Later, I heard from a neighbor that my son dropped the envelope right there in the street and stared at it like it was in a foreign language. My daughter-in-law screamed something about suing me, but there was nothing left to take. I had already given it all, and then taken back what was mine. Meanwhile, I was sitting by the lake in the shelter's backyard, sipping chamomile tea with a girl named Anna. She had grown up in the system, knew more pain than anyone her age should, but when she heard what I had done, she said, "You're the first person who ever chose us over blood." Her words healed something no doctor ever could. Back in my son's world, chaos was brewing. He called relatives, lawyers, even tried showing up at the office of my attorney. She refused to meet him. The documents were clean. My signature, witnessed and filed. The foundation had full rights. The property had been legally and publicly declared as a donation. He had nothing left to fight with, except shame. A week later, I received a letter from my grandson. He'd found out what happened from the school counselor, who volunteered at the shelter. His handwriting was shaky. The first line read, "Grandma, I didn't know. I read the letter 100 times. He said he missed our Sunday pancakes, my humming in the kitchen, the way I used to say, 'God bless your dreams' before bed." He ended with, "Can I see you?" I didn't answer right away. I cried first. Then I waited. I needed to be sure he wasn't coming with someone else's agenda. A few days later, he showed up at the shelter, alone. He waited 2 hours in the front garden, holding a small book I had given him when he was 7, The Little Prince. When I saw him through the window, my heart trembled. He stood up as I approached, taller now, eyes unsure. "Grandma," he whispered. "I'm sorry. I didn't understand before, but I do now." I took a long breath, looked into those eyes that used to light up at bedtime stories, and I said, "I forgive you, because you still remember who I am." We sat on the bench for hours. He asked about the girls in the shelter. I told him about Anna, about Larissa who loved poetry, about Camilla, who was learning to sew. He listened. Not like his father. He really listened. That night, I wrote in my notebook, "The blood we raise is not always the family that honors us, but sometimes one seed escapes the weeds." From that day on, my grandson visited every week. He painted walls with us, brought old toys to donate, read stories to the younger girls. He didn't do it to make up for his parents. He did it because he found a version of family that felt real again. Meanwhile, my son and daughter-in-law moved to a rental apartment in a nearby neighborhood. Word spread, quietly, not as gossip, but as legend. The woman they erased had risen, and in rising, she changed everything. The first night after reclaiming the house, I slept somewhere unfamiliar. Not in the laundry room, not in the cold shadow of silence, but in a sunlit room painted lavender by a girl named Larissa. The mattress was thin, but it didn't matter. For the first time in years, I was not just resting. I was beginning again. The vengeance I carried wasn't loud. It wasn't about screaming, "Look what you did." It was about building something so pure, so necessary, that it made their cruelty irrelevant. It was about proving, to myself and to the world, that I could still create meaning, even after being discarded. We called it Ruth's Heaven, because that's what the girls started calling me. Not Miss Ruth, not Grandma, just Heaven Ruth. Because, as Anna said once, you gave us a roof, but you also gave us breath. I wasn't alone in this. The community stepped in. Quiet neighbors who'd once watched me carry groceries with swollen hands began donating furniture. A woman from the church brought old books. Another brought kitchen supplies. One day, I opened the door to find a man, a plumber, who said, "You don't remember me, but years ago you gave me a sandwich when I was homeless." I never forgot that. The house I had been erased from slowly became a sanctuary. We transformed the old dining room into a study space. The master bedroom, once occupied by my son and his wife, became a small counseling office. The kids' room became a dorm for 3 young women who aged out of foster care with nowhere else to go. We added shelves full of secondhand novels, board games, soft blankets, and framed quotes on the wall like, "She remembered who she was, and the game changed." I didn't remove all traces of my family. That would have been easy, and cowardly. I left one photograph in the hallway. Me, holding my son as a newborn, because that moment was real, and I will not erase my love, even if he erased his. One afternoon, Anna asked me, "Ruth, does this make you feel better, giving them the house?" I smiled, slow and honest. It doesn't make the pain go away, but it gives it purpose. Some nights I would sit alone in the backyard and watch the girls laugh inside. They played music, argued over laundry, and danced while mopping floors. It reminded me of what a home is supposed to sound like. Not commands, not silence, not tension, but life. I received a letter from my sister in another state. We hadn't spoken in years. She wrote, "I saw your name in the paper. You've become a symbol, Ruth, for all of us who kept quiet too long. I didn't set out to be a symbol. I just didn't want to die with my name forgotten." Meanwhile, my son sent another letter. This one was different. No legal threats. No bargaining. Just a folded piece of paper with shaky handwriting. That said, "I understand now. You didn't destroy our home. You saved yourself. I hope one day I can become someone worth forgiving." I didn't respond. Forgiveness isn't a ribbon you tie up neatly. Sometimes it's a door you close gently and never reopen. But I did pray for him, quietly, in my room. God, teach him what love costs, what silence hides, what it means to lose something sacred. One day, I walked into the old laundry room, my former prison. It was now a reading nook, full of sunlight and beanbags. A girl sat curled up with a book, and when she saw me, she asked, "You okay?" "I'm better than okay," I replied. "I'm home." The girls started calling the porch Ruth's bench. It wasn't official, but it was where I sat every morning with my tea, wrapped in a crocheted shawl one of them had made. From there, I watched a new family unfold, not the kind bound by blood, but by presence, by small kindnesses, by shared pain healing into quiet laughter. One morning, I found a E, drawing on the bench. It was from Camilla, the youngest, a crayon sketch of a big house with windows full of smiling faces, and me, standing in the middle with wings. She wrote, "Ruth gave us back the sky." I cried, not from sorrow, from recognition. All those years I spent shrinking, hoping to be noticed, begging for scraps of attention from people who were born from me. And now, here I was, overflowing. My grandson kept visiting, always alone, always humble. He never asked to go back. He simply said, "I want to help you build forward." That difference meant everything. He painted fences, learned to make soup, helped one of the girls fix her bike. One evening he brought a plant, lavender. "It smells like your room," he said. "I want it to grow here." We planted it together. He started calling me my brave grandma. I never asked why. One night I asked him if he was angry at his parents. He looked at the stars and whispered, "A little, but I learned from them what not to be." That was enough. I began writing again, pages and pages. Not just my story, but the voices of women I'd met, of memories I had buried. One of the counselors said we could turn them into a book, Letters from the Laundry Room. The title made me laugh. It felt right. I received a call from a radio station. They wanted to interview me. I declined. I wasn't doing this to be seen by the world. I was doing this so women like me wouldn't feel alone in theirs. The foundation kept growing. One of the girls, Larissa, got a scholarship. Anna got a job at a bakery. Camilla began teaching art to neighborhood kids. I became less of a leader and more of a witness, watching them bloom in a garden I once thought was nothing but weeds. On the anniversary of the day I reclaimed the house, we held a small ceremony. The girls surprised me with a plaque, in honor of Ruth, who turned silence into shelter. I touched the plaque with both hands, closed my eyes, and said, "Today, I sleep in peace. Not because they came back, but because I finally did." Sometimes I walk through the old halls alone. I touch the door frames where I once stood forgotten, where I once whispered prayers into the dark, asking God if I still mattered. Now each corner echoes with laughter, with purpose, with breath. This house no longer holds my silence. It holds my voice. I think about the day they gave me that $2 coupon, the way they laughed like I was invisible. I smile now, not with bitterness, but with clarity. That moment broke me open, and from that break, I bloomed. Some people think revenge is about punishment. It's not. It's about reclaiming the space where you were erased and filling it with something better than what was taken from you. My vengeance wasn't about making them suffer. It was about making sure I never again had to shrink to fit into someone else's comfort. I see my reflection differently now, not as a fragile old woman clinging to memories, but as a warrior in soft skin. I held my family together for decades, and when they let go of me, I held myself. That's power. That's legacy. I don't know if my son will ever truly understand what he lost. Maybe one day, maybe not, but I do know this. I was never just a helper, never just the old lady in the laundry room. I was, and still am, the foundation of something sacred. And if you're hearing my story now, maybe it's because you've felt this kind of silence too. Maybe you've been erased, forgotten, pushed into a corner. If so, let me tell you something. You are not too old to be heard. You are not too late to rise. And you are never, ever too small to matter. They thought I would die quietly. Instead, I lived louder than ever. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment. Tell me, have you ever felt invisible in your own home? You're not alone, and you never were.